Welcome to the Note-Taking Academic Workshop. My name is Deja DePass, and myself and my colleague Suzanne Hamilton are student learning coordinators and academic coaches. Throughout the semester, we are hosting various asynchronous and in-person academic workshops, so be on the lookout for those. So our topic today is note-taking, and our agenda has 8 general items. The importance of note-taking, prepping before and during class, our 7 note-taking methods, what's important, what good notes tend to have, what to do after class, and some general tips. So to start off, why is note-taking important? Studies say that note-taking really helps us with focus and active listening, which fully allows us to take in information. It helps us with comprehension so that we can understand what we're taking notes on, and it improves productivity and task management. So now that we know why notes are important, what do we want to do before class to prep to take notes? First, you may want to preview the text or reading assignments prior to class. That way you know what to expect. You want to check the syllabus to see the topic of discussion, and you want to briefly review notes from previous class sessions. That way you can build upon your knowledge. While you're in class, when you're taking notes, you want to focus on main points instead of jotting every word down, because writing your notes down verbatim takes a lot of time. So you want to jot down keywords, dates, and names that you'll expand upon later when you're studying material. You want to use abbreviations, symbols, bullet points, really whatever is going to be helpful. And you want to use one of our 6 note-taking methods. Our 6 note-taking methods are the Cornell method, outline method, charting method, mind mapping method, sentence method, and simply writing on slides. So first one is our most common note-taking method, which is the outline method. This is most likely a type of note-taking that you've engaged in previously. Typically laid out here, it's a general point of importance is the first bullet, then maybe a sub-bullet with a more specific point directly related to the one above. And then you have a secondary point related to the overall topic, but maybe it's not directly related to the one above. This is the most common and most intuitive form of note-taking. So it does have a few pros. First off, it allows notes to be easily organized, and it makes it easy to see relationships between topics and subtopics. From this method, it's easy to turn points into study questions, and it reduces the amount of editing that one has to do. But it does also have a few cons. It requires more thought in class for accurate categorization. It may not show relationships by sequence when needed, and it can't be effectively used if lecture is going too fast. So outline method is one that can be great, but definitely has some cons to it. Our next method is the Cornell method. So with the Cornell method, typically, one's paper is broken down into 3 areas: a note-taking area, a cue column on the left-hand side, and a summary section, which you'll see this all in the next slide. While taking notes with the Cornell method, students have to use the 5 R's. First one is record. You want to record as many facts and ideas as possible under your notes area. Then you're going to move from notes to cues and reduce the facts and ideas concisely. You want to cover your notes area and recite as much as you can, only using stuff from your cue column and putting it into your own words. You then want to reflect, summarize, and draw opinions on your notes to help you remember. You'll put those in your summary section. And then you want to review for 10 minutes each day. Here is a simple diagram of the Cornell method, where most of the paper is used for the note-taking area. The left-hand side is your cue column, and the bottom is for summaries. So some pros for the Cornell method. It's an easy format for pulling out major concepts and ideas. It doesn't take a long time to really format your paper in a simple way to use it. It's simple and efficient. It's organized and systematic for recording and reviewing notes, and it is typically referred to as the do it right in the first place system. Cons? Typically those online and experts in the field say that it doesn't have any cons, that realistically it is one of the best note-taking methods out there. But one does want to acknowledge that not all note-taking methods are going to work for everyone. So if this does not work for you, that is fine. Our next method is the mind mapping method, also known sometimes as the spiderweb method. So typically with the mind mapping method, you typically have main ideas in larger squares or circles, whichever shape you wish to use. And then you have facts and little notes relating to those main ideas branching off in different directions so that you can see the relationships between ideas. So some pros to the mind mapping idea. It helps you visually track your lecture if you're more of a visual learner. Little thinking is needed, and relationships can be easily seen. It's easy to edit it by using numbers, maybe different marks, or maybe even color coding. It forces you to check your understanding of the topic of hand, and main points can even be written on flashcards and made for a new way to study. Now, some cons of the mind mapping method. If your lecture is a bit disorganized, it can be really hard to do and make these into very sequential, organized kind of points on your mind map. And you might miss a change in content from major points to facts if you're focusing on mind mapping. Our next method is the charting method. You want to use columns and categories to organize information, as shown on the right. It can help one cover a lot of facts and see relationships between topics. Some pros to the charting method. It typically reduces the amount of writing necessary when taking your notes. It provides easy review mechanism for both memorization of facts and studying comparisons and relationships. And it helps track conversation and dialogue where you might be normally confused. On the other hand, the cons. Sometimes it can be challenging figuring out what is the appropriate category. What column is this certain item or idea supposed to go under? And in order to do that, you must know what is going on in the lecture. So if you're lost, it really would be challenging to use this method. Our next method is the sentence method. So the sentence method essentially asks you to write down every new thought, fact, or topic on a new line and number it as you go. Some pros to this method. It's slightly more organized than a paragraph. It gets more or all of the information, and typically limited thinking is needed to track content while going through it. But it does have a lot of cons. So typically, when one is using the sentence method, it's hard to differentiate major or minor points from a numbered sequence. It can be difficult to edit without having to rewrite it all by clustering points that are related. And it's difficult to review without having to edit it and clean it up. So for instance, if you put an idea under sentence 1 and then sentence 12 is related to it, you then have to edit your entire paper to put those two ideas together, which can be very challenging and time consuming. And lastly, we have our method simply known as writing on slides. So typically, if your professor provides your lecture notes ahead of time, we always recommend printing them out and writing notes directly on them. It saves you time from having to actually copy the content on the slides, and you can add in little anecdotes used in class or even your own ideas without having to waste time. Some pros. You can focus on writing any additional content, as I previously stated. Limited thinking is needed to track content, and it allows active listening. Some cons, it does put an emphasis on the need to revise and write down initial notes when studying. And it does not help as much with active recall of major points. So, when we're taking notes, how do we tell what's important? Well, typically, introductory remarks given by your professor often involve summaries of the content that you're about to review, so those are often important. You want to actively listen for any signal words or phrases, or words or concepts that are repeated, because they're usually emphasized for a reason. You want to pay attention to nonverbal indicators, such as your professor pointing at the board and one specific idea very emphatically. And then final remarks also include summaries of main ideas, similar to introductory remarks. So definitely pay attention there. Now that we've covered how to take notes and what to look for, what should good notes have? They should have important examples, any references that were provided in class, definitions and new vocabulary that occurred, key concepts and main points, and then especially important, anything that you don't understand, because you want to make sure you ask a question about that content later. So here are some things to do after class now that you've taken your notes. You want to revise your notes a day or so after class is concluded. You want to summarize them in your own words. You want to write down any questions you have, and you want to put them into chunks or categories of things that are related. And then once you do so, you really want to utilize self-testing. Testing yourself on content helps you tremendously when you want to go in for the test because you've already tested what the content might look like in the form of a question. And you want to use your resources. So you want to go to your professor's office hours if those are available, utilize study groups in your class, go to tutoring, or use academic coaching. Lastly, here are some general tips. You want to make sure you sit close to the board so that you can see. Keep your notes short but concise. Write neatly so you can understand your notes and think while you write them down. You want to use visual elements wherever you can. You want to make sure you get organized and develop a system for organizing your notes. You want to minimize distractions, and you want to handwrite and then type, or vice versa, whichever works for you. When taking notes, you just want to use two different types of things to make sure you're really taking in the information, instead of handwriting it twice or typing it out twice. That is all. Thank you so much for watching this virtual academic workshop.